You probably know who Steve Harvey is. If not, he's a talk show host who's also a stand-up comedian. Now, to be straight up, I never really thought he was really all that funny, but who knows? Maybe that will all change today. Now recently, Steve put out a video on his YouTube channel talking about his faith. Now Steve identifies as a Christian, so even if I don't really find him to be all that funny, I can still respect the fact that he took his platform to tell people about Jesus and the gospel. Now on the YouTube channel, he posted a video last week called How Steve Harvey Prays. So let's go ahead and take a look not only how Steve Harvey prays, but also how he shares the Christian faith with his audience.
Today I want to tell you about a guy. You may know him for his comedy. You may know him for his mustache. But today I want you to know him for his religion.
Wait, I'm confused. Are you confused? Now, I know there isn't really a specific way that Christians are supposed to look, but based off of him being an American, what he's wearing, and the fact that he's standing outside of a mosque, we might assume that he's a Muslim and not a Christian. But I already know what you're thinking. You're going to say, stop being so judgmental, Mr. Meme. Let's just hear him out. And to that I say, fair enough. We obviously can't tell if someone's a Christian or not based on how they look or what they wear. So instead, we must do so based on what they believe. So let's go ahead and listen to what he has to say, and we'll use that as a method to determine what exactly Steve Harvey believes.
Hey, I'm Steve Harvey, stand-up comedian, entertainer, television host, family man. But most importantly, I happen to be a man of faith.
All right, a man of faith. Now it's time for him to describe the importance of Christianity to his large audience. So let's go, Steve. I'm rooting for you, man. Don't mess up.
Steve is a very successful guy. He has made more money than he ever thought. He has become more famous than he ever thought. But at the same time, he managed to keep his relationship with God closer than ever. Why did you not lose faith as you became more successful?
All right, sorry. I hate to stop at such an awkward scene of him throwing around $100 bills in slow motion because, well, I guess nothing screams religion and humility like throwing around $100 bills with your homies like you're in a hip-hop video. But more importantly, the interviewer asked him why he didn't lose faith when he became more successful. Now, that's an odd question to me. Why would someone lose their faith simply because they became successful and got what they wanted? Maybe I'm missing something. So let's just go ahead and hear how Steve answers the question.
Why did you not lose faith as you became more successful?
If I could make myself successful, I would have done it a long time ago. I would have skipped so many of the lessons I had to learn. But it's not that. It's a process. Success and happiness is a process, man. And in this process, I was very aware of the amount of faith that was needed. And as a matter of fact, it really took more faith than I even thought I had.
Yeah, so his answer was a little bit confusing, but I think that his answer seems to basically be that he needed faith in God in order to be successful. If this is right, then his response seems to be a little bit problematic in my opinion. Okay, because first off, too many people today view God as simply being a genie in a bottle whose sole purpose of existence is just to make them happy and successful. Now, to explain how we got here as an American culture would take me almost an entire video to flesh out, but what I want you to notice is how people today tend to see God and religion as primarily a form of therapy or a personal development tool. Given that we live in a culture that has so many different options when it comes to therapeutic tools or when it comes to self-help and that sort of thing, people tend to see religion and God is just another option and not necessarily something that's true about the world and how the world really is, but instead as a tool that can be used for their own personal development. This is why when people find out that you're a Christian, they'll often say things like, "I'm glad that you found something that works for you, but I don't need that Jesus stuff." Or they might say, "If it makes you a better person, that's great. Just don't force it on me." The reason why is because today in culture, God is primarily seen as a self-help tool that only exists to help you out when you're in a really bad situation or from when you're trying to get something that you want really, really, really bad. In reality, what people are ultimately seeking is not the God, but instead a tool that they can use in order to get their real God, which can be money or success or relationship, happiness or whatever. So a better question for Steve would be, if the reason why he kept his faith was because he needed God in order to make him more successful, then would he still have his faith if he wasn't successful? Because after all, the Bible has never promised us success or fame or happiness or anything like that in this world. The only thing that we got promised is that we will have trials and tribulations. So what do you think Steve would say to that question? I'm not really sure, but let's go ahead and keep going.
See, oftentimes, people who are religious think their religion is right and everybody else is wrong. There is only one way to God. But Steve's faith is unique because it's really not about that.
There's no one way to heaven, no one way to paradise. It's like television. Now it's over 800 channels of cable, and they're all pretty entertaining. So I'm pretty sure, man, that to get to heaven, there's got to be more than one route. Because somebody watching another channel or taking another channel than you, they still getting entertained, and they probably still getting to heaven.
Okay, lots to unpack there. Now first, let's go ahead and start with what the narrator said at the beginning of the clip. He said,
See, oftentimes, people who are religious think their religion is right and everybody else is wrong. But Steve's faith is unique because it's really not about that.
but that's not quite right, is it? I mean, everyone thinks that they're right, and so therefore they think that anybody who doesn't think that they're right is wrong, including a religious person like Steve. Think about it. The narrator talks about how Steve is not like those other religious people who think that their religious views are right and that everyone else is wrong. Nope, not Steve. But then right after that, Steve goes on to talk about his religious views that he clearly thinks are right. And if people disagreed with Steve on this, then obviously Steve would think that those people were wrong. Steve already talked about how in the video he believes that there's multiple ways to God. So anybody who thinks that there's one way to God, he thinks is wrong. So in reality, his view sounds persuasive to people because it has this feeling or this illusion of being more tolerant. But in reality, it's not any more tolerant than anyone else's view. His view might sound inclusive on the surface, but really, his view really just excludes hundreds of millions of people who believe that their view alone is right. Now, recall how Steve said,
There's no one way to heaven, no one way to paradise.
But at this point, it becomes harder to know what exactly Steve means when he calls himself a Christian, because it was Jesus who said that he is the way and no one comes to the Father except through him. And it was Jesus who also said that if you don't have him, then you're going to perish in your sins and you will not have everlasting life. Steve makes it sound as if the reason that someone should be a Christian is so that way they can be happier or more successful, but he seems to miss the problem that Christianity actually solves. If we don't understand what the problem is that Jesus solves, then of course we won't understand why Jesus is the solution. Now, if you're looking for a hint, Jesus didn't die on the cross in order to make us happy or successful. He died so that way we could be in a right relationship with him, and then that way we can get into heaven. So obviously the problem won't be solved without Jesus.
After hanging out with Steve for a week and visiting mosques, churches, and museums in the Emirates, I am convinced religious harmony, religious respect, religious tolerance is the most important thing.
Now, I will say that I appreciate what Steve and the narrator seem to be trying to do. They seem to be trying to get everyone to get along and to stop having any conflicts between religions. But the way that they go about it doesn't really seem to solve the problem. As we mentioned earlier, when they talk about things like unity, there's an illusion of acceptance, but in reality, their views aren't accepting anyone who doesn't hold the same religious views that they do. So if their proposed solution is just to minimize disagreement between religious people in hopes that everyone starts to get along, then the problem never really gets fixed in the first place, since they actually disagree with everyone who doesn't hold their religious views. So obviously, that solution doesn't work. But the solution that does lead to more tolerance is actually found in the view that's been in front of Steve's face all along. It's as simple as taking what Jesus said seriously. Jesus didn't teach us to pretend that everyone is right and on the right track and ignore reality. Instead, Jesus told us to love our neighbors and even to love our enemies. That means that it doesn't really matter how much we might disagree with our enemies and our neighbors, they're still made in God's image and they're still just as worthy of love and respect as all of us are. So Jesus gave us a way to live that doesn't get rid of truth for the sake of love, and it doesn't get rid of love for the sake of truth. Jesus actually gives Christians a real way to have harmony in society.
This isn't just talk. Steve lives by these words. He has 3 sons. 2 of them, he gave them Christian names like Broderick, and one of them he gave a Muslim name, Ali, as a sign of respect and appreciation for the Muslim religion and the Muslim culture.
I named him Ali because I knew then.
That he might be different.
I knew.
And you have no problems with it?
No. Because when you come here, you understand Islam is a religion of peace. Why you got a problem with peace?
Man, oh man, where to even start? I mean, yeah, why would anyone disagree with peace? Well, the last half of Steve's video has to do with his acceptance of Islam, which I was going to respond to, but then I thought, you know what? I know a guy who's far, far better than me at responding to these points, and he can do a better job than I could. So for the second half of the video, I decided to have my friend David Wood from Acts 17 Apologetics to take it from here. So go ahead and click the link in the description or on the screen in order to watch it, because trust me, you don't want to miss this one. So I'll see you over there. But the next time that you hear Steve Harvey saying,
"There's no one way to heaven,"
what are you gonna say?